the meeting to order and have the Pledge of Allegiance and then roll call. And it is 7 o'clock. Wait a minute. There, that way people over there know it's here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Director Slater-Carter.
Present.
Director Penrose.
Here.
Director Warren.
Present.
Director Blanchard.
Here.
Director Boyd.
Present.
And Director Reddick.
Who has mentioned that she will be late.
Thank you.
Special order of the day, recognize June as World Oceans Month. And did you have something?
No, just wanted to recognize that.
Just wanted to recognize it. Well, as a community that lives on the edge of the ocean, and is strongly influenced on a daily basis from it, I think it's important to note that for all of us, and particularly the strategic plan that Sam just adopted, that the Sam board just adopted, Sam not only recognizes that, but considers ourselves to be one of the primary environmental organizations on the coast, because our crew and management and board members all work very, very hard on a daily basis to keep our beaches and our communities clean and healthful. And the ocean is part of that. Leonard.
And to add to that, I think that most of the people that live right along the edge of the continent here next to the ocean, most but not all think of themselves as caretakers and protectors of the edge of the ocean. And so Sam in particular, and the SAM employees and the SAM directors need to always keep that in mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone on the board? No? Okay, let's move along to public comment. I have 3 speaker slips. The first is John Coughlin.
I think I'm going to remove myself from the list. I'll save it till all the board members are present.
Okay.
I mean, that might be next meeting, that's fine.
Okay, great. John Sosbo. Zabo?
Zabo.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is John Zabo. I live in Half Moon Bay. I was recently called incompetent, not educated, at a Half Moon Bay City Council meeting. And I just want to go over a little bit of my education. I moved to Half Moon Bay in 1965 and graduated from Half Moon Bay High School in 1969. And then went to the United States Coast Guard. Went to New York, where I was in gunner's mate school, became a gunner's mate. For those who don't know, gunner's mate's basically a mechanic of the tools of war. My job was to fix cannons, machine guns, and all the other things on Coast Guard cutters so we could kill people better. This was during the Vietnam War, and that's what I did. Then I came back, went to the phone company for 30 years at AT&T. I was a construction splicer for a long time, then a maintenance splicer, then a construction splicing supervisor. My area that my crew covered was from Devil Slide to the Santa Cruz County line, and from San Carlos to the Santa Clara County line on the Bay side. I had 16 people that worked for me, and had a lot of education, a lot of classes and all I took at the phone company. Then I came back and then started working with SAM. I've been with SAM about 14 years. I am a grade 4 collection worker. I've got my grade 4 certificate. Grade 4 is the highest certificate you can get in collections. I earned my certificate. I did that through online courses, Sacramento State, and different seminars and classes I'd gone to get my certificates. I've also got a grade 1 environmental source control certificate, and it's got the same way, a lot of training, a lot of classes, a lot of studying. I'm very proud of these certificates that I've gotten through SAM. I am not the only one that has these. The entire SAM staff, we are all certified in our different fields. If you're interested, at the wall out there, there's all certificates for all of us that we've earned. We're all very proud of them. We keep continuing education to learn what we need to know in our separate fields to keep the plant, the pipes, the collection system working properly, and to keep the ocean clean. That's what we do. Recently, at Half Moon Bay City Council, the mayor of Half Moon Bay said we were incompetent and uneducated. I figured that we were blamed for the spills that have been going on here. The reason there were the spills we've had, these big ones along the intertie pipeline, is because we're uneducated and incompetent. I'd say we are all educated for what we need to do. It's a 30 to 40-year-old pipe that's laying in the ground, it's rotting, there's holes in it, you see it out here, there's the holes, you've all seen them. How can that be blamed on us being uneducated and incompetent? I don't understand that. There's nothing we can do unless that pipe gets the money it needs to be replaced. If the board cannot come up with monies to replace the thing, there's nothing that we can do about it. And so I don't like the idea that we're blamed for being incompetent, uneducated, and it's our fault that pipe is failing. So please, Ms. Mayor, do not,
I did not
Please,
intend
go.
that for our staff here. I think you
This
guys
is-
are
this
doing
would be-
a great job.
we're incompetent and
No,
uneducated.
not
No.
talking about line staff at all.
Let's let John finish,
Yeah.
and then, I believe there are other comments along the same line, and then you can have a chance to
Sure,
respond.
thanks.
Yes. So anyway, my idea, the only real incompetence here is the idea we can't get the money to replace the pipe. That
Thank
is what's causing the problem.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you.
Carlos Mendez.
I will refrain from my comments at the present time until after,
John
I'm sorry,
Coughlin.
John, I believe you were first.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Coughlin. I'm also here because of some of the comments that were made at the city council meeting. The statement was, somebody mentioned we should be really careful about hiring because of previous bad episodes. Episodes like the Beechwood decision, the sewer spills at Sam, and I guarantee you that those two notorious incidents were the result of not having well-educated, competent staff. Well, I have a Bachelor of Science in Biology. I have a Master of Science in Environmental Science. I have nearly 20 years of experience working for utilities in water and wastewater, supporting operations staff. Some of those years were here at SAM. I know these guys. The three main operators, they have over 80 years experience between the three of them working at this plant. So they're highly trained, they know this plant. So I thought, well, it can't be about the staff. So maybe she's talking about her own competency or the competency of the board. And I was hoping we might hear some clarification or a comment about what that was referring to.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Carlos?
Mayor Ruddick, my name is Carlos Mendez. I am an employee here at SAM. You went ahead and said, I quote, "The Beechwood decision, the sewer spills at SAM, and I guarantee you that those two notorious incidents were the result of not having well-educated, competent staff." That is a false statement. We are all competent here. We are all well-educated. Furthermore, you also said, our employees and your elected officials are making decisions that have very significant impacts, and not just to the residents here, but in the region. You know, we're in the coastal zone. We're in the coastal zone because we're a region of statewide significance. Our infrastructure is currently failing. And it is not a result of the staff here at SAM not wanting to go ahead and get it fixed. It is a result of the boards that go ahead and comprise this authority that do not allow us to go ahead and proceed with repairing the pipeline. It is failing and polluting our environment. And somehow you have lost sight that we are a region of statewide significance. Shame on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Reddick, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I am very proud of our SAM staff. And I think they're educated and competent and do a great job. So I did not intend that for you all. However, staff is defined not just as line staff, and I would never blame line staff, right? You are subject to the management in your organization as well as the elected officials. So I had no intention of blaming you for this. I think you guys do a great job, and I think this past season demonstrates that. I'm not gonna get into the blame game beyond that, but I want you to know it had nothing to do with our line staff or our current manager. But things have a way of snowballing. Bad decisions were made in the past. It happens in hand with elected boards and general managers, although I will exempt our current staff there, and I probably should have, clarified that. So I'm sorry for any hurt feelings or lack of clarification. I think you're doing a great job. And I think it's incumbent upon us to address, pipes just don't burst like now. They burst from lack of attention. And I think there are many reasons for that, but it builds up over time, not a bad decision, so. I'm exempting line staff, I'm a line staff myself for a public agency. So I understand how hard you work and how confident you are, and I just want to reassure you about that. But I think we need to revisit past policies and decisions that have led to the situation that we are in today. Clearly, things were not attended to when they should have been attended to in the past. And now we're paying the price for that. And I think it has something to do with the structure of our decision-making framework, and that includes the JPA. So, I just want to reassure you that I'm very pleased and proud of the staff we have here now at SAM, and I think you've inherited a mess created by a lot of previous bad decisions. And I intend to work with everybody here to make sure that we take care of the outcomes, the results of those bad decisions. So I did not intend to slam against you at all. And I just want to take this moment to reassure you about that.
Thank you. And Ms. Penrose?
Yes, I have spoken with Deb Ruddock many times about SAM, about the staff at SAM. I have never heard her say anything except praise for you guys. I don't know what you do as well as she does, but she has reassured me on and on about what a great staff we have. And I've never seen anything here or heard anything here that would dispel that. So I'm sorry that that comment came out. I'm sure Mayor Ruddock didn't mean it about what's going on with staff, line staff. I just know she doesn't.
Good, thank you. Let's convene in closed session. And I want to thank everyone who came to speak tonight. Generally, we have cookies. Please come to our meetings in the future. It's nice to have an audience.
It was snowing in Truckee yesterday.
This is like 50 minutes off.
Okay, let's call this meeting back to order. And I have a question for the board. We have closed public comment, but I have I should announce that no action has been taken. No reportable action taken, whatever. I have a speaker slip from someone who is in the audience and would like to speak. We had closed public comment. I'm asking the board if it would be all right to open public comment for
That's interesting.
one speaker.
The resolutions in here show public comment before and after closed session, even though it's not on the agenda now.
Right, but it's not on the agenda that way, so I take what's on the agenda.
Chair
Scott,
has-
I
chair
hear
has
one
dis-
eye.
Chair has discretion.
Debbie?
Chair has discretion.
Okay. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, and I say that's 4 yeses and 1 neutral. Please come on up. Ariel Mosley.
Thank you. I'm just here representing my family that spends a lot of time in the water. And my question is, how come you are delaying on the repair, the permanent repair of the force main that's been such a concern to the community for such a long time?
Well, that's it?
Yeah.
We have an engineer here to talk about it tonight. It's a much longer discussion than I think we have time for right now. But please stay and listen to the rest of the meeting and the budget. And,
So does it have to do with money?
pardon?
It's have to do with money?
Yes?
Could I just pitch in just like a 2-sentence thing?
Okay.
So staff is already authorized and has the money to do the design work for the first chunk of the repair.
Mhm.
And in our budget that we're discussing tonight, we have quite a bit more in the budget.
Okay. Okay, so I can expect to see some real headway?
Better, yeah.
It takes planning, money, planning, permits, all of which cannot operate simultaneously, but it does take time.
And the will of the board. And I'm finished.
Well, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Good. Moving on to consent agenda. Approve minutes of May 22nd, 2017, and approve disbursements for June 12th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Leonard and Scott, all those in agreement?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? Motion carries. Old business, discuss revised JPA general budget fiscal year 2017-18 and authorize the general manager to submit it to member agencies for approval.
Well, the original proposed budget that went to the member agencies is a significantly larger request for the infrastructure portion. Through various discussions with the board and direction from the board to have a discussion with the member managers as well as the engineers for the member agencies, to talk about how we could really narrow that focus to a smaller dollar amount. And at the last meeting, I provided some feedback that I had received from those discussions. The board asked me to go back and have another discussion and to try and get everyone on the same page with the budget. And I would say that as a whole, there is an agreement that obviously of all the projects that were listed for consideration for year one of the 5-year plan, which is fiscal year 17-18, the one that I think everyone can get behind is the IPS in that we need to prevent future spills. So that is something that we need to move on. And that the sort of comfort threshold for infrastructure funds for this year would be about $1.5 million. That it wasn't a blanket guarantee from all 3 agencies, but there was more comfort in that range than north of that.
I don't understand the guarantee reference. What's guaranteed or not?
The $1.5 million, they didn't want to speak on behalf of their agency to say that $1.5 million is a no-brainer and everybody's gonna say yes. They just said that was an amount that they could consider, that there was a comfortability that the member agencies' rate structures could support that in this first year, because obviously with Proposition 218s, most of them have already been done, while one or more agencies might be able to spend more in 1 year, then that would cut into the second year, or it could cut into projects that had already been identified for those agencies. And so the $1.5 million was sort of where we ended up with a level of comfort that it would not overly stress the agencies. And there were different amounts for each agency, but that seemed to be a point at which everyone was at least okay discussing what would fit into that. And the direction given was that we should only fund IPS projects and nothing else. So however many feet of the IPS, that force main, those 3 segments that we've talked about, when we put it out to bid, however much we can spend and get with that amount of money is what they wanted us to recommend, and nothing other than that. They did agree that we could consider the surge tank as part of that, because the surge tank has an influence on the structural integrity of the IPS itself. There's no reason to replace that and then continue to cause damage. So those together.
Is that something that can be separated out and done real soon?
Well, we don't have any funding in it for the budget. We could do it sooner than waiting for all the rest of it. Yes, it is a discrete item in and of itself. It doesn't have to wait for the design of the IPS work.
Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
So we're in the design phase.
Yes.
How long is that expected to take?
We had anticipated receiving at least the first part of the first contract, which was for 2 segments, by June or July.
Early July.
Early July.
But the work is not underway right now?
No, they are working on the first 2
okay.
segments, the design work, and then
Okay.
we added the 3rd segment after the Arroyo incident.
Mhm.
So they actually expedited that because the environmental folks were out here to talk about the first 2 segments, and SRT was talking to them about all of the segments.
Okay.
So that design work for the 3rd segment at the same time,
Is being done concurrently.
Yeah. concurrently, so all 3 segments by early July.
Any other questions?
No, I would like to make a motion to approve the budget on the condition that the IPS projects be carved out of the general budget and be presented in a separate project budget.
Technical correction, all we can do is approve sending the budget to the member agencies for their approval. We're not approving the budget at this meeting. So the motion should be that.
Okay,
approve
what I would
sending
like
the
to
budget
see
the
is,
member
what goes to the member agencies is a budget that has the IPS project carved out of the general budget and presented as a special project budget.
So are you saying that so first of all, the staff recommendation says, staff recommends the board of directors approve the revised JPA general budget and authorize the general manager to submit it to the member agencies. So they are recommending the
Right,
budget be approved.
but the motion didn't have the right words.
So your motion is to approve the budget
The
with-
budget with the IPS project carved out of the general budget and presented as a special project budget.
And what would the reason for that be?
Well, so that we can talk to our boards about that part of the budget. We talk to our council, get feedback, find out, what their thinking is on it.
Unless the intent is to not approve that, I don't see any reason for splitting it out.
Well, I'm gonna second her motion for discussion.
For the purposes of discussion, thank you. And Leonard, would you like to finish your comment?
I don't see any reason to split it out unless the anticipated intent right now is to not approve that, and I think we have to approve it. And so the member agencies have to set their rates, and if that's gonna be discussed separately, then it just throws a monkey wrench into the whole process. It's too late in the cycle to be playing with games.
So
Scott,
I don't,
excuse me, Scott.
No, go ahead. Let's
Okay,
wrap up
Gavin.
let's wrap up
I
this
don't
portion.
see that. I'm saying you separate it out, you present 2 budgets to you approve the budget, and you send that budget and then the special projects budget to the individual member agencies to look at. And make a decision about whether or not they wanna approve it.
what is?
So why is that a monkey wrench?
I still don't understand the benefit of splitting it out.
Because I think it's gonna be, more transparent, more open, easier for our council to look at it that way.
So
Scott?
the nature of what the JPA requires that we do and that we're considering tonight is that we take the budget, which is a SAM work product, we approve it for distribution to the member agencies. And then it goes to the member agencies and they make up or down votes. And then if there's an upvote and we get enough upvotes, then we proceed with that budget. It's our job to hammer out the details before it goes to our member agencies. So there's like no line item or pocket veto kind of aspect to what we send out to the member agencies. There's yes, we approve, or no, we don't approve and we don't want to participate. If we have specifics, and I did have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask staff about specific line item elements of this. This is really the appropriate place. This is for
It's really what?
This
The
is really the
appropriate.
appropriate place, and no matter what we think about the JPA, it is what we have guiding us today, and so that's what we're here to do. I'd kind of like us to finish this topic, and then I've got some questions for staff.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So I see where Dr. Penrose is going with this. First of all, I'd like to state, I don't think anybody wants to delay construction of that pipeline. You know, we have the ocean out here, it's a sanctuary, we have public health issues, we want to move it. I will point out that originally, Half Moon Bay wanted to see a separate capital improvements budget. And we've backed off on that, and the reason is, you know, for most of those things, the benefits based on flow are pretty clear. With the IPS, it's a really big ticket item. It has the potential to seriously affect our rates, whether it's this year or next year in combination. And I think that the city council, part of which we have 2 new members, and the public ought to hear that bigger discussion separate from the budget. So we're okay with the budget itself, but we'd like to see it broken out in the project budget and the general budget. And we're okay including the rest of the capital improvement program within that general budget. This thing, we believe, because of the price tag, deserves to be broken out in a project budget.
Scott, do you have any more comments?
I did have a question. I believe what you said was a special project budget. Did you mean a special budget called project budget or a special project budget?
A special project budget.
Okay. So I know wording matters sometimes, and could you help us understand the phrasing? I mean, I think I get where you're trying to go with this, and I think it's a good thing, but I'm just trying to understand.
I don't necessarily see it as special, but I definitely see it as a project budget because of the price tag and, you know, the issue of potential benefits based on flow. And because of the impact to ratepayers, it behooves us, I think, to have a separate discussion.
Oh, I mean,
Okay. I have a question, and that is, in looking at the budget on page 26,
this is the printed 26.
well, I'm not sure, it's a 26 or the 59. It's got 2 numbers there. It's
What
called
PDF what
infrastructure,
PDF page number?
infrastructure division.
Wait, I have to find it first.
Which number is the PDF page number?
Look at
The
the
little
bottom.
tiny one.
The little tiny one, okay, 59. And it says infrastructure division, and then there's a discussion after that of what that involves. Now, you want that amplified? That's not sufficient,
I want it separated.
but it is separate pages. It's pages 26, or 59, 60,
But the
61.
GPA agreement is pretty explicit about the structure of the budgets. And basically it says one budget for.
Well, I understand,
so
and
Kath-
this is a portion of the one budget, and that's why I'm confused.
So Catherine, you're saying that the section
See,
pages,
yeah, here it is.
pages large number 26 through
Yes.
large number 31 would be the infrastructure section, is that right?
Yes.
No, that's not right.
Infrastructure's on 31, I believe.
Well,
31.
we're very confused here because I'm looking at it says infrastructure and it comes just after the, budget page number 25, the PDF page number 58.
Right, so on
And
PDF
it
page
says
58 it
infrastructure
says,
division.
right,
May I ask a question or make a comment? I think we're talking about, you know how we originally discussed the recycled water project as a project budget? And then we backed off of that when we did the conceptual planning. But it's gonna come back to us as a project budget for each of the member agencies to approve. I think what Dr. Penrose is saying, we'd like to see the general budget, but we'd like to see a separate project budget for the IPS, the $1.5 million of the IPS.
Is that what you're
And
saying?
we're
Yes.
grateful that it's
Okay.
been moved from 3 million to 1.5 million, but we'd like to see general budget and a separate project budget for the IPS improvement.
But it's not a project in the sense that the JPA agreement uses the word project.
And that's critical, is in the way that language has become such a battleground.
I'm not sure I'm all opposed to this, but I do know that with what we're looking at, and as we struggle with this, I'm not sure that we know what we'd be voting on, because we don't have it in front of us. And that concerns me, as we try to figure out, okay, which pages and which parts.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty clear which section of this document is talking about infrastructure. And in that, the numbers are called out in the budget line items. I'm wondering if there's a way we can get to that thing that you want to discuss with your council.
But I don't understand why it can't be discussed. Captain Bay wants to discuss it as part of the bigger document.
I've been holding off on asking my questions to staff, but it would actually impact this, so maybe I could jump into those and we
Why
could go
don't you
back to
ju-
this.
why
Yeah, I
don't
have comments
And
too,
if, and
so,
if you,
yeah.
do you wanna go first, or?
I'm trying to find my comments, so go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, let me first start off with a compliment to staff. When our general manager proposed joining an organization to help us buy chemicals to save money, I wanted to know how much are we gonna save, and then I wanted a report about how much we saved. And I'm pleased to report, looking in the budget item tonight, I'm seeing 20,500 saved so far, right? And this is savings going going onward, so that's just one of those really nice little pieces of, $20,000, that's real money, so yay. And that might be just the most fun thing we talked about tonight. But I didn't wanna let that go by, because I remember thinking a year ago, gee, I wonder how all that's gonna work out, and so, thank you for that one. I was looking through, trying to find if there was anything that we might take a sharper pencil to, because anything that we don't have to put into the rest of the budget, we might be able to spend on the pipeline. I'm pleased to report that staff has done a good job of squeezing things down and finding things to defer, or perhaps do a slightly different way, and those, so I don't really have much there. I don't see a lot of detail in the building and maintenance, but it's really not that big of an item overall, and I know that we've got some things that we have to attend to, so I'm just gonna leave that be. On the infrastructure, I really appreciate that staff came at it with trying to get that 1.5. I think that was very important to do. I think it provided a kind of a forcing function to say, all right, let's really consider our priorities, and I'm grateful that staff has done that. I think the clarity on where we the clarity on where we wound up in terms of recommendations is very helpful. I did wanna ask if there were a little more money that took us out of our comfort zone. Do you have what the next bits would be, like where you might spend the next $250,000 or $500,000?
More segments of the IPS. There are so many critical projects, so many that have the potential for,
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Sorry, guys.
Just have one.
There are so many of these items that were identified in the infrastructure plan, and they're all at risk,
Mhm.
which is why they ended up where they ended up. But if I could paraphrase one of the general managers from one of the other agencies, is the most critical thing we can do right now is stop spilling.
Mhm.
So of all of the issues that we have, that's sort of the active volcano right now. And so if every dollar that we can find or add to, or squeeze out of, could go somewhere, I would say that staff would really like to not have to respond to spills from the IPS. So if we were to find a money tree somewhere and shake it and get another $500,000 out of it, we would go to the contractor and say, how many more feet will this buy?
I'm interested in seeing if we can't go a little further.
Well, I would support that.
I think that that's certainly something to discuss, but this is the budget we've got in front of us
Well,
tonight.
we can amend this budget before it goes out tonight. If we choose to amend the budget, this is exactly the time to do it.
And you did that last time when you requested that I break it into two pieces.
Right.
It was presented to you as one general budget, and the direction was that you authorized it as it was presented with one change, which was to break the contract collection services out and keep everything else. And I did that before I sent it to the agencies, but because that's the only budget that was authorized to be sent, even though we've been having these back and forth questions and answers and how do we get there.
Yeah.
In order for them to consider anything other than what I sent them back in April, you would have to authorize me to send a revised, which is what I was asking for tonight. If you wanted me to do something and modify it from what's in front of you, I could do that before I sent it out.
Right, and I think that's what I was saying.
Yes, I
Okay.
just wanted to clarify
Just
that
checking.
you had done that already previously.
I checked with our,
I want to make a
I
suggestion.
checked with our general manager about, I wanted to get a really good understanding of where the thinking was about the available budget that we were talking about trying to hit for tonight. And then had the discussion about could we go further, and it would take us out of our comfort zone to be sure. But if we've got more to do and we can manage to get more into this, I'm interested in doing that.
Okay. Leonard, then you, Tim.
Based on what Scott was just saying, that I agreed with, I'd like to toss a suggestion to the board that we and this is gonna be somewhat of a pain for staff, but that we approve sending the budget as is, but then also approve sending an alternate one so that the member agencies can potentially approve it with only one difference between the primary and the alternate, and the one difference is the level of spending on the IPS.
So, for example, 1.5 or 2.
Something like that, yeah.
I don't know why that would be a big pain. It'd be the
Well,
same
just in terms
thing.
of managing the paper.
Okay, while you're thinking about it, Debbie has a comment.
So, you know, I find a lot of the comments, I guess they're from general managers on page 29.
What PDF?
PDF is 29. You know, so here we are, we're faced with serious negative outcomes after years of deferred maintenance. And yet people are proposing that we go deeper into stripping ourselves bare. You know, that's the word here. We need to think SAM budget like personal finances. We need to strip the budget bare. You know, I just don't get that. You know, I think it behooves us, if we're making mistakes, to correct those mistakes rather than go deeper into the same, you know, process. We're government, we're not a family, we're not a business. In fact, we're the opposite of a business. We're here to protect public health, safety, and welfare, and that involves multiple layers of transparency, accountability. The process is slower. We don't necessarily make a profit. Sometimes we're in a deficit to solve the problem. You know, like saving money on, you know, a sinking fund for replacement vehicles. Our workers depend on safe, working vehicles to do their jobs. I don't want to deprive our workers of the tools and the vehicles they need to do an effective job. You know, that's like, stupid as far as I'm concerned. You know, I like the idea of trying to smooth out rate increases, but the fact of the matter is, we have years of deferred maintenance. We live in a very highly regulated environment, and basically rates are gonna go up, facilities are gonna cost more, and I don't see that we win by actually cutting back further on our organization and our organization's ability to not only proactively manage our wastewater, but keep them from even reacting when there's an emergency. So the savings to date, I think, are relatively piddling and have the potential to hurt us. I mean, might we not buy vehicles that have, you know, that are more fuel efficient and that might last longer and cost less to operate? Have we looked at the economics of that? I mean, so just, you know, axing a sinking fund for vehicles to me just smacks of easy, convenient optics rather than, you know, creating material benefits. So I have a lot of problems.
Let her finish.
So I have a lot of problems with this. I don't know who, which of the managers recommended these things, but I think they're very short-sighted. And I, for one, am not going to vote for eliminating a vehicle sinking fund. I think that's short-sighted. So yes, we have to be sensitive to ratepayers, but we also have to be honest with them about the cost of doing business in a regulatory environment, and properly spending the money to educate people and communicating about what it is we do. What are the costs of not acting? What are the costs of not providing tools and equipment that are needed for our staff? You know, what are the costs of not paying adequate salaries for people who must work in a regulatory environment and sometimes work very long hours? So, you know, shorting our staff of the things they need to do their job, totally short-sighted, and I don't support it. You know, saving $10,000 here, $20,000 there. You know, the reason we did a strategic plan and a capital, you know, improvements program for the first time was to get ahead of these sorts of things and to plan for it so that we can manage at an agency level and on a SAM level our finances, so that we're actually moving forward and providing more benefit rather than cutting ourselves to the bone. I'm sorry, I don't get it.
Okay, Leonard.
I think I agree with everything I just heard, but I have a clarifying question on the vehicle replacement. And I don't wanna try and find it right now, but, my understanding is that the member agency managers don't want to put money, for replacing the collection system vehicles because Half Moon Bay appears to still be posturing to not use SAM.
If that's the reason you're doing this, you know, forget about it.
I don't know, I'm asking for clarification. I mean, I agree with you as far as the vehicles for the O&M side, you know, for treatment, but if Half Moon Bay may leave the collection system maintenance,
We
then
haven't
it
left the
doesn't make
collection
sense to
systems, we
replace.
haven't had that discussion, it's probably cost prohibitive. But in the meantime, because of some speculative policy by the future city council, that's not a reason to make short-sighted decisions about our collection staff or our treatment staff or anything. I'm not saying we spend huge amounts of dollars just to keep people happy. I'm saying that we protect our assets, invest in our people, and not make stupid, short-sighted decisions about what we eliminate.
I think it's a little late in the budget cycle to be bringing that up. Perhaps we should make sure that we include it next year. The important things to get done are to make sure that we can get this budget approved by each of the councils. And I think that's a primary mission here, and it has been reviewed by the general managers. I know in talking to Montera's general manager, he's comfortable with this. So I'd like to see us, if nothing else, start making the kinds of changes that you were talking about earlier in this evening, because I agree, I think we should have reserves, I think we should have sinking funds. But I'm not sure that at this late date, in this particular budget cycle, this is the time to do it.
I have to disagree with that.
So what about my suggestion of an alternate with the one line item higher amount?
That would achieve what I'm suggesting. Just
Well, I thought of
basically
it because of what you were saying.
option A and, oh, okay, well, option A, option B.
Because each member agency would then have the ability to approve one or the other or both, and if all member agencies approve both, then we go with the higher number.
I have a question for staff. So, in asking what would happen if there were like an extra quarter or $500,000 going to priorities, I think you answered that question pretty clearly. My understanding of this list of recommendations by one or more of the managers and engineers, not all of these were addressed in your presentation, is my guess, because it's a bunch of different people, you're gathering a lot of feedback. Things like the truck sinking fund seems to have come out. I'll just note that in the past, when a truck is worn out and we deem it worn out, we just go get one. You know, we put that truck in the budget and we see it coming, and it's like repairs are starting to be more than it's worth, and let's put a truck in the budget and go get one in the coming year. I'm all in favor of saving for these things. I've no end of times you've heard me go on about let's build replacement cost into the way we budget. But I'm not, me personally, I'm not too concerned. If there's a truck that we need to get, we need to get it. But if we're talking about trying to get into a good savings program so we have the money when it comes time, this doesn't seem to be the year where, you know, a good savings program is top priority.
Well, to respond to that particular issue, my first iteration of the budget with the member managers had the entire cost of the replacement vehicle built into the budget. And I was directed, because it's the collection system, which is the contract services rather than the JPA, so it's a different conversation, was that they didn't like the spikes. So you're going along and you're paying, you know, let's just say so much per foot of pipe clean, and then you double it in 1 year because you bought a new truck that was $300,000, and then you go back to a lower amount. The conversations that I was having was they were more interested in smoothing it out by putting money into a replacement fund so that they had a more consistent comparison for the cost of doing it, as opposed to every year it's sort of something different. And so I revised the collection system budget and put in what it would cost to spread the purchase of vehicles over about 12 years, because that's about the life of a vehicle over here, especially for the larger trucks. And I, to be as sensitive to the situation as possible, is in response to Half Moon Bay saying that they were getting comparison costs from other places. that do sinking funds, that do replacement funds, they don't jack up their rates in a year, and they really spread that over. And so for them to do a fair comparison of apples to apples of what does Sam actually charge to do those contract services, that's why I put in the sinking fund.
So let me ask, let's turn to the issue that Director Ruddock is bringing up. Do we need a truck this year?
Yes.
Then I'm
Which-
gonna suggest,
Which one in terms of cost?
It's to replace both of the smaller cleaning vehicles. We've been sort of
and that would
hanging on.
come out to how much?
Well, we had a little bit of money in this year for it, and so it'd be about another 100. It depends on if we wanted the camera on it, anywhere from 100 to 150. We hadn't gotten a recent quote, but with the money that we had in this year's budget and the remainder of it in next year's budget, it would be about another 150.
And if we don't get it, what do we do?
We keep cannibalizing one of them to keep the other one going, which is becoming more and more difficult. And then we end up with only one truck on the road.
Not good.
So
And that was the direction we received
I
from the
would propose
managers.
that we provide the alternate budget with the 2 instead of 1.5, and 100 of that to go to the truck.
Okay with me.
And it gives you a split. Are there other, so I guess I'm revisiting my question to you about if you had the extra money, what's right next on the priority list? I think the ability to respond to urgent issues timely and safely is pretty high up there, so I don't think any of us, I don't know, I'm looking around, I'm not seeing a lot of disagreement.
Well, it's just the JPA budget is different than the collection system
Understand.
budget, so
Oh.
the question would be, is this purchased by Sam the JPA or Sam the vendor
it's gotta-
providing?
It's gotta be in the collections budget if it's part of the collections operation, so,
Right, and that's the next budget, and that was a question, and that came up with, that Sam was too cost prohibitive to contract with. And that's why we removed it.
well, now they've got comparisons that they can make, so when they take it to West Bay or whoever, they've got maybe apples to apples.
Okay.
So for the JPA budget, then are we talking about changing it, changing the amount of the budget still? And while you're thinking about that, on page 30 of the budget, 63 of the JPA, the last paragraph,
I mean, 63 of the PDF.
63 of the PDF, 30 of the, thank you, Ken, 30 of the budget. The paragraph starts with the infrastructure division budget increased from 0.75 million to 1.50 million from fiscal year 2016-17. The significant changes in the infrastructure division from the adopted budget for 2016-17 included in the 17-18 budget are: 1, reallocated 0.30 full-time equivalent of the engineering and construction contracts manager to treatment to more accurately reflect and support those functions. 2, increased, I hope I've got the right one. Yeah, it increased the
Infrastructure division.
infrastructure division by 951,300, based on direction provided by board staff, has minimized the list of infrastructure projects for 2017-18 and has budgeted only for the highest priority projects that can be funded by available revenue. The projects planned for this fiscal year are: IPS, replace segments from station 51 plus 50 to 73 plus 50, $1,430,000, and Portola Pump Station, replace surge tank, 75,000. Does Half Moon Bay need a more descriptive statement on the on what's going on? Would you just like that expanded?
No, I'd like the motion that I made and that was seconded to be voted on. I think I was pretty clear.
All right, do we have any more comments?
I had one comment totally unrelated to numbers with dollar signs in front of them. That's on PDF page 24. If I can manage to get back there.
Is the PDF the small number or the big number?
It's the number at the top in the little box.
Well, it depends on your
I don't
PDF.
have a little box.
Depends on your PDF. viewer.
It's the small number at the bottom
Just the
of the
PDF.
I'm
page.
just open right here. That one. And then, and then click on this thing. No?
PDF
Oh, you're in the
24?
browser.
PDF 24.
This
It's
is,
the only place I've got it.
this is the budget number, and the little teeny one that you need the glasses
PDF
for is the PDF.
No, that's not.
Okay, there's,
Okay.
Or is it?
Page 2 of the
It
staff
is.
report.
Right, it's not numbered as part of the agenda, I mean, as part of the budget,
Budget
because
documents,
it's
it's
a
part of the
staff
agenda.
report.
Yes, is that the page?
Yes, it's page 2 of the staff report.
Okay,
There's 5 bullet items under the heading background and discussion / report. The third bullet item, I'm gonna have to insist that the wording be changed on that. It says all budgeted positions will be filled if they become vacant. That has to be changed, all authorized positions will be filled if they become vacant. Because this board has commonly budgeted for positions and not authorized filling them. This is an ongoing issue between the board and management.
all of the positions that are authorized and budgeted are the same at this time. There are no positions that are budgeted and not authorized.
Okay, then it doesn't make any difference if you change budgeted to authorized.
You realize this wasn't asking for permission, this was saying the assumption is made for the budget purpose.
All right,
That this is what we will consider.
I just want this in the legislative record.
Okay, let's put it in the minutes, for sure. All right, any more comments? All those in favor of the motion as stated?
Can I ask for a roll call, please?
Certainly. Roll call vote?
Director Slater Carter,
No.
Director Warren,
No.
Director Blanchard, Director Reddick,
Yes.
Director Penrose,
Yes.
Director Boyd.
No.
We have a tie.
Jim?
Do we have, can Half Moon Bay have, present this to the board separately, and they can have the, present it as they wish, I mean, we want Terry to put it on, can present it, combined. Yeah, so we can do this, so you guys can do what you want to do.
Well, we'll present it to our board no matter what.
Good.
So,
Okay.
I principally said no for this reason. I don't see what it would look like. I don't know what I'm approving. And so I kinda think I get the kind of the seminal idea, but when it comes to the budget, if we're imprecise, it just never goes well.
imprecise.
And
Well, we don't have it in front of us of what it would look like, and so I think that creates possible ambiguity, and it's June, it's mid-June, and it's not, we don't have the time, I think.
Yeah, for similar reasons, that's why we want the project budget broken out.
Well, and that's why, I was asking if the budget, the documentation that is in the budget was sufficient. And, that's why I read it, was to show that in fact it is broken out. And if you go through the, line by line items that precede that, it has each of the specific costs associated with those, in terms of labor and others. We need another motion to be able to move this on. Jim, did I hear you make a motion that, just a minute, did I hear you make a motion that said we should approve this budget and that Half Moon, as presented, and that Half Moon Bay could work with, approve sending it to the member agencies, and Half Moon Bay could work with our general manager
That's correct,
to get it in the form that they would like?
that's correct.
And did I hear a second? Thank you. Discussion.
I don't know what that means.
It means you win.
It means that you're,
Just that you'll break it out as a special project.
for
budget.
your city.
Thank you.
If I.
Oh,
if
I see a comment from staff.
I would just like to caution you, and we had this discussion when we talked about 2 rather than 3, that the JPA language of project versus capital P versus little
That's
p,
right.
if we break it out, then SAM itself is agreeing that O&M replacement and repair is capital P, to be voted up or down for participation like the recycled
I
water.
think it depends a lot on how we characterize it, and the legislative intent should cover that if we're clear. I don't have any problem with someone coming up with presentation materials where it's called out as a separate presentation item, but what we, as a board, have a duty to do is to approve a budget for distribution to the member agencies for their approval or lack of approval. And on this one, it would be a single budget, which would encompass everything that is in it. So even if there's separated presentation materials, it would still be each member agency being asked for a single up or down on the proposed budget.
On the proposed JPA budget,
I wanna
because there
be-
is no line item veto.
Right, and I think we have to be super clear on that. So if there are separated presentation materials, it doesn't change the question of, does each member agency approve of this budget?
Right, and my concern is that I keep hearing from the side of the table that referring to the IPS as a project, and it's not a project in the sense of the wording in the JPA agreement. And I just can't support anything that's gonna let Half Moon Bay discuss it as if it was a project under the JPA agreement.
Okay, so where do we go from here, guys?
Oh, there's an alternate motion. Well, the
So,
first motion failed.
The first motion failed,
There's a
so
motion and a second.
we have a motion and a second, and we have clarifying language on the intent of that motion. Scott, did you,
I understand this to be a motion to approve the budget as presented with additional directions to staff to assist Half Moon Bay in providing separate presentation materials for the infrastructure.
yes,
It's my understanding that that's what I seconded.
I would like to ask you to consider that we offer the A-B choice of 1.5 or 2.0.
Well, let me modify that suggestion, that we send a side letter that says, how much higher for this line item are you willing to go? And so the lowest number that all 3 member agencies approve will be the number, but it has to be a minimum of the number
Is
that's
that
in the
gonna get
budget.
us to a conclusion that we can all go out and set our rates on and send our,
Well, some member agencies might end up with rates too high.
we've gotta get something to the tax office. So
Yeah, I know.
we're looking for closure here.
that's right.
Okay, well then, let's just stick with the budget as presented, and then the alternate with the one line item at a higher level.
So I'm proposing option A being the budget as presented, and option B as that with another 500,000 into the infrastructure.
Right.
But that 500,000 into the infrastructure, you previously had been talking about a truck or
Well,
2.
I think we should figure out, and we're not on to the collection side of it, but if the truck and or trucks have to do with collection, that's where that money needs to come from.
Right,
But then it might need to be 400,000 above the number in
I
this
put out
budget.
500,000 just as a,
But if,
I just threw a dart at a wall.
right, but if you want to also increase the amount going for the trucks, that's the other budget, and so if you think the member agencies might go for a total of 500,000 more, then this
Well,
is gonna have to be.
to be fair, my notion of a quarter or a $500,000 extra was in response to staff's prioritization of additional IPS work being the single most important thing that we can do.
So are you kind of thinking 500,000 more for the IPS and another 100,000 more for trucks on the collection side?
I'll put that on the board. Feel free to talk to me one way or
And
the
since
other,
there's two
but
separate budgets,
That's the next item.
I understand, it's,
yeah.
let me pencil in 500 extra here and 100 extra there, and I think it's something we should discuss and see, you know, are we willing to stretch that far? Call it the stretch goal.
And so that would be
The stretch goal.
$300,000 for Half Moon Bay, because we're dividing the 6 up.
Well, it's a little different because the collection system is divided differently, so
Right.
for this, it would be approximately 250, 125, 125,
Okay.
roughly, because it's not exactly 50%, but.
No, it's
I'm not,
30,
I'm not
20.
following.
Okay, so I'm proposing that we take their motion.
We need the
And-
whiteboard on this side.
I'm proposing we take their motion, which has the infrastructure budget at 1.5, and offer our agencies option A, which is the budget as presented, and option B as that same budget, but 2.0 million put into the infrastructure. And then separately, on the next agenda item, go add in 100,000 for that truck.
Okay,
So, and I understand, this is taking us well outside of our comfort zone, that's why I'm calling it a stretch goal, but, so, we'll have to. But I wanna put that out there, and then we can discuss it and see, do we feel like this is something we wanna talk to our
I
boards about?
suggest for clarity that we have 2 motions. One on the presentation of the budget to each of the member agencies. And then the other on adding an extra amount to be voted on by each of the member agencies.
Doesn't fit within the JPA requirement. The JPA requirement
So we have to
is-
do an A and a B.
I think so, but the difference between A and B is that $500,000.
A single, in a single line item.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
it's just adjusting that one line item.
So let me suggest an amendment to the motion and see if this covers what we're talking about.
Jim has to look.
So the amendment would be that we also send an alternate version of the budget with the one line item increased from 1.5 to 2 million. Are those the right numbers, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, and that the budget, so the motion is that the budget be sent to each of the member agencies with an additional line item,
An alternate
An
version
alternate
would also be
version.
sent for
also
potential
be
approval.
sent, and that Half Moon Bay work with staff at SAM to get it in a format that they can comprehend,
And they can discuss it.
that they can discuss and comprehend, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I think the comprehend part is unnecessary. I mean, it's just a
Yeah.
matter of providing some clear, separated information for their discussion.
Right, okay.
But I know that's not everything they're asking for, but it's something that would fit within the form of what we're trying to do.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
I
Well,
need some clarity on the motion.
Okay,
Want me to try and restate the motion?
I have motion number 3, that was to take the budget to the agencies.
that would be number 2.
2.
Number 2 was the approve the budget and let Half Moon Bay work with the GM.
that's the one we voted on.
They just
That-
amended
And
it.
it didn't,
We're just
it got-
amending.
that one died.
we're
Oh,
just
you're
amending
amending
that
that
one.
one.
No.
No,
Is
we
that
haven't
one-
voted on that.
Blanchard and
voted.
Warren,
Oh, gotcha.
yeah, they motioned and approved, but there was no,
No, we haven't voted on motion number
No.
2 yet, we're talking
No.
about an amendment. We're still
Yeah,
sticking
same
with
motion.
motion number 2.
okay.
And so the amended motion number 2 is to approve sending the budget as presented to all the member agencies, but to also send an alternate version of the budget with the infrastructure line, or with the IPS line item increased from 1.5 to 2 million,
Okay. That's okay.
right? Everybody agree with that restatement?
I think 2 people who are very important to this haven't made a comment on this.
Right, but am I accurately restating what we proposed?
We're missing we're missing the asset half room bay being here.
And that staff work with Half Moon
Right.
Bay on whatever additional presentation materials Half Moon Bay needed.
Okay, comments from Debbie? Deborah?
No, I am still in favor of my first motion.
It's not consistent with the JPA agreement language.
And I don't understand what this all looks like either, I would need to
I don't know
see
what
this.
you mean, it's
Yeah.
not consistent.
The
I don't-
JPA agreement specifies the structure of the budgets that's sent out, and it doesn't allow
What are
it
the
to be
words
split
that
up.
say it?
Just a minute, and
Carl will get us.
Carl
those words.
will, at his fingertips, he will read it.
We have a couple of tabs here. General budget. General budget shall be prepared, shall be submitted immediately, blah, blah, blah.
You have to look at the annual part, not the initial
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
That's that part.
General administrative expenses covered by the budget.
You've got member agencies road and right, so this, at the
Expenses,
time.
yeah, expenses of operating and maintaining any improvements operated or maintained by the authority. Revenues accruing to the authority, including assessments, sufficient to cover the general administrative, operating, and maintenance expenditures. There's a separate section entirely for project budgets. And these are for projects that don't consist of the improvements operated or maintained by the authority under Article 4, which is the present project as defined in the JPA, which consists of the IPS, the pump stations, and the treatment plant. That's part of the general budget, in other
Creation
words.
of-
Pardon me?
Which were about the creation of those pieces of infrastructure.
Right,
Not the ongoing operations,
I
but
don't
the
think
creation
I
of that
understand.
right.
Yeah, could I call the question, please?
Oh, calling the question is a parliamentary procedure that requires a vote of the board.
Let's consider that a request to have the chair call for a vote.
Why don't I call for a vote? I'm hoping everybody understands what the budget needs to be under the JPA.
I do not.
Well, I don't seem to have the JPA agreement on this machine.
Okay, could you maybe explain that a wee bit more?
I might be able to take a stab at this.
Explain to me how my motion is not in agreement with the JPA.
Well, what I would say, your motion contemplated taking something that has traditionally and under the joint powers under the JPA been treated as part of the general budget because it consists of the project as opposed to a new project. In other words, the project is defined in the JPA under Article 4 as all the things that Sam came together to build and operate and maintain. And that includes, at the time that JPA was originally authorized, there was a contemplation of 3 possible plants. But it was clear that the present project, which is what we're talking about, and this falls within operation and maintenance of this project, is within the scope of the original project. It's not a new project, it's not a different project.
Why is the JPA agreement not on the website?
It
It's been on the
is.
website for 20
It
years,
is.
it's not there now.
Leonard,
It is.
calm down.
That's,
We've got stress here and that's off topic.
So if you remember when I did my presentation at the city council, there was a slide that I did, and I said, this is what constitutes SAM. And it listed out 3 things. One of them was the IPS, which is the actual pipeline, the 3 pump stations, and the treatment plant. That is SAM. Those are SAM's assets. And so the general budget talks about the operation, administration, maintenance of SAM, what SAM owns. SAM owns the entire IPS, the 3 pump stations, and the treatment plant. And then it says, as an ongoing basis, that the members of SAM will pay for those costs every year as part of the general budget based on flow percentage.
It also talks about the fact that special projects are not included in that agreement.
This is not a special project.
Special projects are something outside of the original project.
Yes.
So the original project is SAM. So a new project would be recycled water, never included in that.
New project could be an IPS line, a new IPS line.
No.
Carl,
no,
wait,
no,
Carl,
no.
would you address that?
Yes.
Yeah, the way the agreement is structured, there is the present project, which is, I mean, I'd have to find it in here because I quoted it, but intertie pipeline and attendant pumping facilities connecting the Montara and Granada systems to a new ocean outfall, to an ocean outfall pipeline and attendant pumping facilities discharging the combined treated effluents from the 3 member agencies' treatment systems into the ocean. And then that's the first part of it, and the second part has to do with the treatment plant, and the JEPA contemplated 2 alternatives. One was each agency had their own treatment plant, but SAM didn't go in that route. They decided to have a single treatment plant. So that's also part of the present project that the general budget operates and maintains. And operating and maintaining in this instance, because the JEPA doesn't talk about capital versus operating in the sense that an accountant would. It talks about operating and maintaining this present project, and something that's outside of the scope of that would be a project with a capital P that would be subject to a separate project budget and would be subject to Article 6 under the JEPA. The present project is under Article 4. There's a pretty clear distinction in the agreement. I recognize the terminology is not the same as what somebody would use in finance today. I don't know that it ever was necessarily, but there's no doubt in my mind that the present project that we're all trying to keep going in order to fulfill the mission of SAM is the whole thing, the whole ball of wax, the IPS, the pumping stations, the treatment plant, and the outfall.
If we had to go paint the door on one of the buildings, would you call that a project? The only difference between that and this IPS is the scale. Philosophically, they're identical.
And this is the difficulty that SAM has faced when the IPS discussion has come up in the past, is who participates and how do they participate? Is it a new project or is it a part of the original present project? And this is something where various iterations of the discussion about rewriting the JPA to make it so that the language is more clear to the common use of the word project. But for years, there was no misunderstanding that replacement of infrastructure was part of O&M. And in fact, the section of Valamar that was recently replaced was paid for by all 3 member agencies under that exact same understanding. Everybody paid for it. What they didn't pay for was a special project like the wet weather project, which was a totally new thing, and each member agency could decide under the Article 6 to be in or be out of that project.
That's actually arguable.
Well,
but we don't have time
Leonard,
tonight
we
to
do
it.
not.
But I'm just saying, that was where that in recycled water, the same reason when I presented a recycled water project budget was that recycled water was, we didn't build the facility to recycle water. That is a new version of this treatment plant. And it would, which is why each member agency would have to vote in or out of that project. And so I want to draw attention to the time
Thank you.
for the meeting, and I also want to draw attention to the time for the budget. I know there was some discussion at the last meeting about it's better to be late and get it right. The problem is there's no language in the JPA that tells me how to handle if we don't have a budget come July 1.
Except I'd point out that it's happened before that Sam hasn't had a budget on time. for various reasons. And it's also happened that, various agencies have approved separate O&M and capital improvements budgets. So it hasn't been a hard and fast rule over time.
Well, I cannot, I'm sitting here now, and so as the manager now, I'm saying I can't find any language that would support it. I've asked our council that we have now to help me find language that we can use, and I'm not able to find anything. And I know in the past it's happened, and I have not been able to find under what authority. I know that other government agencies do things like that. The problem is, I don't have money of my own. My money comes from your approval of the budget, which expires June 30, and I don't know how to keep things going if I don't have a budget come July 1. So those are the two important things we need to do. Is it's almost 9 o'clock.
And it's 9 o'clock and we have a hard stop time. Do we have a motion to continue the meeting
I move to continue the meeting
How long?
for 5
for,
hours.
by an hour? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. A motion by Scott and a second by Deborah. All those in favor? Aye.
Well, if that is
Opposed?
supposed, if that is supposed to pass, then I'm just not gonna vote on it. I have to go
Okay,
figure out.
I heard one aye, 2 ayes. Do I hear any more?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Aye.
Aye, and Leonard?
I need to get home and try and figure out how our wife is gonna get back from China.
All right, we
Since she's
can,
missing the connecting.
Is that a no or an abstention?
thank you.
Call it an abstention.
So, we are talking about budget structure, and we have a motion to move this as presented to the member agencies with an alternate, increasing the line item for infrastructure, particularly the IPS, from 1.5 or $2 million, and to have staff work with the Half Moon Bay on the presentation of the materials. And I'd like a roll call vote on that, please.
Okay. Director Slater Carter,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
No.
Director Warren,
Aye.
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Blanchard,
Aye.
Director Reddick.
No,
We again have a tie.
Yeah, but it's a fine pickle we are in, Molly.
we're happy to move the general budget and send a separate IPS budget to the city council.
I'm not prepared in any way to do anything where we walk out of here tonight without board agreement that we're working on the IPS. This is the single most critical item. We know that. Our staff and consultants have, under grave pressure from us, determined that that is the #1 priority. I think any action we take that fails to comprehend and support that would be a grave mistake. We need to approve this budget. If you don't want to consider a stretch goal, I move that we approve the budget as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Director Slater Carter,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
No.
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Warren,
Aye.
Director Blanchard,
Aye.
Director Reddick.
No,
Can I call on our colleagues to help us understand how you propose to help us get the IPS funded?
We take it back.
we're totally interested
Absolutely
in
want
getting
the
it funded.
IPS funded. Want it funded and built as quickly as possible.
Well, there's
And we
one
want,
no
clear way to
question.
do
we
that.
want it
No, there
broken
is
out for
Wait,
consideration.
one at a time, please. Director Penrose and then Director.
I gave you an option, a way to do it. That's the way I'd like to see it done. I don't see the objection to it. I don't know why we're bringing the JPA agreement into this when it's a very simple, straightforward matter. We want the IPS repaired. We want the budget approved. We would like the two things separated out.
Why?
I don't think you've made a compelling case for separating it. What you want is fine, but you know what, we all want things. We've heard from council as to the required structure.
Which
This-
makes no sense
well,
to me.
That may well be, but you've heard it from Leonard, you've heard it from me, and council, you've heard it from council.
No,
Who-
what I've heard from council is an explanation that does not direct itself to the question of mind.
Okay, what I thought I heard council do was read from the JPA, the relevant sections guiding our actions as a board as to the form, structure, and procedure for dealing with budget.
Which
This
does
is-
not address this question.
Creating a new form, a separated budget, one which you now have made very clear is something that you want put into the projects category. The project category, which is subject to a different section of the JPA than the overall budget for SAM, the very section of the JPA that Half Moon Bay has been making historically for the past, and I know you don't want to hear this, 15 years or so, an argument is something that is open to interpretation, whereas the other section that we're talking about with this budget is done by ownership. I understand I think I understand why we might want to move that portion into a different category of JPA authority, but what's been presented is consistent with the requirements of the JPA. That's what I heard council say. In council, all council was doing was reading from the JPA itself. So if we want to get this done, what we have in front of us conforms to the requirements of the JPA. We can always talk about, with our respective agencies, we can always talk about any item on this that we want as part of what we do when we talk with our respective electeds. No restraint on how we talk about it, but what's required is we as a board here approve something, it gets distributed to the member agencies vote, and we either have a budget or we don't. Right now, we haven't done our part of getting a budget approved for distribution for possible approval. That's what we gotta get done tonight.
Well, we have one, but the one that was sent had the full
It's,
large amount.
this in front of us is what we asked for in terms of scoping it and prioritizing it and trimming it down to accommodate the priorities of our professional staff, at the direction of the board. So what we're looking at tonight needs approval, or we're not gonna have a budget.
To the chair, could I recommend that we take a short break, a restroom stop, and then come back?
Sounds like a deal. Let's take a 5 to 10 minute break.
Okay, thank you.
Christine, and I apologize to the public. I have been remiss in all of this discussion in not asking if anyone from the public would like to make a comment. So if somebody from the public would like to make a comment, but we have a, let's see, we don't have a motion on the table. That was voted down.
I'm kind of curious if you don't think this is out of line. We had at least a couple people that spoke basically supporting spending the money and fixing the IPS now, and I'm curious if they could identify which of the member agencies they live in.
If they feel comfortable doing that. So if you want to make a comment, please fill out another one of these and give it to Kathy, and I would be happy to call on you.
What was the question?
If you would,
What did?
Which of the 3 member agencies, Half Moon Bay, Granada Community Services District, or
Oh, Granada.
Montera?
I'm a resident of Granada.
I thought so from the last name.
good, okay,
John, I
and
said hi.
do I see anyone out there who would, raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment, please.
I have a follow-up question about.
Ariel, if you
Yeah.
would come up here, please.
Is the drawback, Dr. Penrose, that you think that you prefer that the part of the project, the improvement to be called a new project, rather than maintenance? Is that what's the matter?
No, the matter is I'd like it separated out from the budget as a separate budget item. I'd like to approve the budget.
Mhm.
I'd even approve a special project budget, but I want them separated out.
But if it's, I guess I don't understand to what benefit.
So that our council can look at it and make decisions on it. They have to decide whether or not to approve the budget.
Okay,
And I'd like them to be able to approve both parts, one part, either part.
So you'd like the budget in more detail?
No, I'd like it separated out, just as I said. The IPS project separated out.
okay, thank you. Okay, let's bring it back to the board. So, we've had two motions, both defeated. We need to, as you heard from staff, we need to get these budgets to the member agencies. And, I am looking for ideas.
Well, we're happy to approve the general budget and happy to take two budgets back to the city council and our staff so that we can have a transparent, in-depth discussion about what this means for the city and the taxpayers, you know, what it means as far as we're concerned about the JPA, but we'd like it broken out. And, you know, regardless of what happens here, we will act expeditiously, you know, at our city level. So,
Yeah, you're going to get two budgets because we need to discuss the maintenance budget as well as the JPA budget,
you mean the collections budget?
the collections budget, yes. So
And
you're
we're happy-
asking
We're happy
for
to move
three
on the
budgets.
collections budget too.
So you're asking for three budgets.
Yes. Not an entirely separate capital budget, but just an IPS budget is one of those three. We're happy to approve the general budget with the capital budget with the exception of the IPS.
That would be the entire infrastructure budget, basically. I mean, the,
Oh, it'll be $1.5 million, yeah.
that is, right now, I mean, as we were requested from the member agencies and their engineers, is to only consider the IPS project, so it would be the entire infrastructure division.
We're just talking about the IPS project.
IPS is not a project. That's why we're stuck here. Because Half
Right.
Moon Bay keeps calling it a project, it's not a project.
Well, then we have to agree to disagree until we can get resolution, and we expect that to come potentially, you know, at the city of Half Moon Bay level, city council level.
Well, there's nothing for the city to approve or disapprove of because we haven't cleared it off of our desk. We've got to clear this out. We've got to hand it off to our respective agencies, and the only way that we can do it is to approve this budget and distribute it. You can take it out to them and they can decide they don't like part of it. That could happen. I mean, I think our job really is to take them something, take each of our agencies something that we're ready to argue for and defend and get support for so we can get on with our business. It's what I did last year. There was an ask made here at this board. I went back to my board. I defended it, made a case for it, won the support for it, to bring Monterey in alignment with what we had discussed here. Any of us can do that. And I really think it's incumbent on us as a board here with the responsibilities to the sewer authority to take something out and fight for it and win it and get the work underway.
Here, here.
And it's always possible to take the thing that we're trying to pass and take it to your council and not get approval. That's one way it can go. It's not a good outcome, but it's one way it can go.
What if you broke it into two separate budgets?
JPA doesn't contemplate it, it's not authorized under the JPA.
The JPA agreement, skipping the language about the first budget, it says thereafter at or prior to each March meeting of the board, yeah, good luck with that, a general budget shall be prepared for the ensuing fiscal year. The initial budget and each succeeding general budget shall include the following: the general administrative expenses of the authority, blah, blah, blah. The expenses, that's number one. Number two, the expenses of operating and maintaining any improvements operated or maintained by the authority.
That's what this is.
Right. And that's all that's authorized under the JPA agreement is the simple budget for O&M, operations and maintenance, and you're proposing splitting it into O and another budget for M. And that's not authorized by the JPA agreement in any way.
Or should it be?
If we were adding, new pipeline, say to go up 92 or something, that would be a new project, clearly, unmistakably, that would be a new project. That would have to be brought forward in a project budget. And we've done those, I mean, we've got the underground tanks in El Granada, that was one such project. In that one, each member agency voted, one member agency opted not to participate, the other two opted to drive it forward. That's what happens with project budgets. But maintenance budget, this is a thing that we actually have to do as the O&M budget, and that's what we have in front of us tonight. It's taking that thing that we already have and giving it the maintenance it needs.
It's not maintenance then.
Yeah, how
So it's
not?
not.
How is it not?
If,
It's a new pipe.
when my muffler falls off or rots out, I replace it, that's maintenance, it's not a new thing, my car had a muffler, I repair it, I have another muffler. I just got 2 new tires, that's maintenance on my car. They're brand new tires, brand new, cost a lot of money, low rolling resistance tires, but it was the same thing I had on there before. And what we're talking about doing here is taking the existing thing and keeping it in working order. And there's no question that it's not in working order right now.
It's my dire need.
And we've gotten to this point where anyone can see the section of pipe that was cut out in one of the replacements. This is representative of the kind of pipe that we have. It's got holes in it. That's completely untenable for our agency. I mean, we all agree, right, that the protection of the environment is job one. That's what we're talking about.
I have a question. We have 2 engineers sitting in the back of the room who work for Sam through SRT. Can this pipe be repaired or does it have to be replaced? Ken, if you would be so kind.
Repairing the pipe to bring it up to the condition it needs to be would be cost prohibitive versus simply replacing it and having a new piece of infrastructure in the ground.
Thank you. So it's kind of like patching tires to the point where they don't work anymore.
So what if we just accepted the budget and directed that it be sent to the member agencies as opposed to approving it and adopting it?
We're not approving it, we're authorizing it to be sent to the member agencies.
If that's the motion to just accept it and authorize that it be sent to member agencies, I can live with that. If it's to adopt it and approve it, no.
No, approval is done by the member agencies.
I tell you what,
No,
instead of
so-
arguing it,
No,
let's
no,
go
I'm
with
not
Debbie's
arguing,
motion.
I'm not arguing, I'm trying to help clarify.
I will second
didn't-
your motion.
I didn't realize that we had the words that are kind of stuck underneath this thing. So, yeah, what Leonard said is, we're approving to distribute it to the member agencies for approval by the member agencies. So approval comes from the owners.
For consideration and potential approval of a
Paragraph
member
4,
agency.
at the time of its preparation, a general budget shall be submitted immediately to the governing bodies of the member agencies for approval pursuant to Article 3, Section G above. Final approval of a general budget shall require the prior consent of all member agencies.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have discussion?
I wanna hear the motion.
You made,
I did not make a motion.
you made a
So,
motion.
I said in
No,
concept.
Here, hang on. Leonard, keep an eye on the language of the JPA. I'm gonna try to find the staff recommendation because it has exactly the words we need.
It says approve the revised JPA general budget and authorize the general manager to submit it to the member agencies for their approval.
There it
I'm looking at page 30, PDF page 30. Staff asks that the board discuss the revised budget and authorize the general manager to submit it to the member agencies for their approval.
Okay, so it says two different things in
Okay,
two
so-
different places.
Okay, so what I was referring to is
That gives
this,
us option.
on PDF page 30. Leonard, is that if we authorize the general manager to submit it to the member agencies for their approval, does that conform in your reading?
Move that the board of directors authorize, the board of directors authorize that the revised general budget for fiscal year 2017-18 be submitted to member agencies for their approval, rather than we approving it.
That's right.
Right.
That's fine.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second with Leonard Warren.
Can I hear the motion again, please?
I move that the board of directors authorize the general manager to submit the revised JPA general budget for fiscal year 2017-18 be submitted to member agencies for their approval.
Okay, that was the motion and the second by Leonard Warren.
Could you repeat the motion back, please?
Board of Directors authorizes the general manager to submit the revised JPA budget and the 2017-18 budget to the member agencies for approval.
Okay, discussion.
I think
All right,
we've
could we
had
have a
enough
roll
discussion.
call vote, please?
Absolutely. Director Slater-Carter,
Aye.
Director Warren?
Aye.
Oh, you already seconded.
Well, so I'll have to vote aye.
Okay. Director Blanchard?
Aye.
Director Reddick?
Aye.
Director Penrose?
Aye.
Director Boyd?
Thank you. Moving on to item 7B. Approve revised contract collection services budget for fiscal years 2017-18 and authorize general manager submit it to the participating agencies for approval. Staff report.
Keep it brief. Basically, we had the same sort of discussion with this. The primary issue was about the cost of the equipment and whether or not all three member agencies would participate and get a benefit from the purchase of that new vehicle. So in response to the concerns, we removed the purchase of that vehicle from the budget, and that's what you see here.
And that vehicle was $150,000.
It was approximately $150,000. That was in the original, that was requested to, before it was brought to the board in April, was to smooth that out. And so what we put in was, funding for a replacement fund, and or financing of vehicles. So that would give us the ability to, if we chose to finance it over a period of time, the money to actually pay the financing costs. And then that was requested that we remove that as well, for the same reason, concerned that that would be money set aside for a vehicle that, if not all three member agencies stayed with the contract services, that they would get benefit from it. So we removed all funding for vehicles from the collection system in response to the request from the member managers. And since this is a contract, it really is a different discussion.
I think I only have one question. Were all three member agency managers in agreement on doing that?
Yes.
Well, then, since the collection system budget is totally different structure and is driven under contract, with the member agencies basically delegating to their managers to run the show, I'm inclined to just approve it if the member agency managers were in agreement on it. It's gonna come back and bite us later, but, that's what the member agency managers are in agreement on. But you heard it here, it's gonna bite us.
Thank you. Any other comment?
I know you will, but let's please keep the receipts organized for the maintenance on this thing, and any records that we can, without too much work. Just keep track of what this is gonna cost us, so that, you can go back to the managers and think about this next year and, learn from this experience.
Any more comments? Do we have a motion? Keeping in mind the language that we adopted on the last motion.
I move we send this collection system budget as presented to the member agencies for their approval.
So you move that we authorize the general manager to submit this budget, the contract collection services budget for fiscal year 2017-18 to the participating agencies. for
Yeah, that's what I
approval.
said, I just left out some.
Second.
That's what I thought.
Second.
All right. All those, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Slater Carter,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Warren,
Aye.
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Blanchard,
Aye.
Director Ruddick.
Aye.
Okay, moving right along. Consider and discuss and consider adopting the proposed media relations policy attachment. Staff report.
Should you sorry, this one. As discussed at a previous meeting, the board asked that the media policy be referred to the outreach committee, which is Director Penrose. I prepared some revisions based on the feedback at the last meeting, basically removing specifics regarding when and how press releases regarding spills will be done, because that was the concern. But basically, the rest of the policy is intact. The only request that came out of the outreach committee was that press releases go to the outreach committee for review before they're submitted. The problem is the outreach committee isn't a standing committee, it's an ad hoc committee. And so I couldn't really build that in there, because then the board would actually have to create it as a standing committee.
And the board would also have to authorize very explicitly delegating that responsibility to the committee, and I wonder how many of the board members would do that delegation.
Right, and so the policy was brought back with the language that there was some issue with at the last meeting removed, and I left it redlined so you could see what the difference was. And otherwise, this would give the manager the ability to issue press releases that are, generally proactive in nature. The board approved one for the IPS project. It would be more in line with those types of press releases than the one that was discussed last time.
I'm unclear on whether, as written, how much discretion does the manager have to decide we need to issue a press release on something? Let's not specify what the something is, but if something comes up, where in this policy does it indicate that you can, as the, what is PIO?
Yeah, public information officer.
Yeah, that was a new one on me last month.
Well, generally, it's to disseminate information that's of public interest. Very clearly, I understand that the board did not authorize a press release regarding spills. I understand that. But there are other things that are of public interest. For example, we could do a special project. We could enter into an agreement with an agency to perform a special agreement. We could have somebody who got an award. In the past, we've had staff who were recognized by CWEA and CASA. I could do a press release on something like that. So it's something that might be of interest to the community that wouldn't necessarily be seen unless they were specifically looking at our agenda. But it would be something that we wanted to proactively reach out to the media and make sure that they took notice whether or not they chose to print it, but we are trying to draw attention to it.
Now, one thing, and I don't know if that has to be built into the policy, or if the board can just agree that this is the sense of the board, but the directors have to see it before the media sees it, because we don't like surprises, and things get printed in the paper that the board doesn't know has been sent out publicly, and then we get phone calls from constituents, and it makes us look bad. It's like, you know, what are you talking about? And that has happened in the past, and we can't let that happen. We need to know no later than at the same time it's sent to the media, it has to be sent to the directors, and preferably before that.
And are you saying that you've gotten direction from the board that we will not report on spills?
No, I said it was very clear at the last meeting that there was no direction to issue proactive media press releases regarding spills. So let me clarify. I have no authority to speak on behalf of the agency,
Right.
okay? I have no authority to add to the website unless the board approves it, except for what's listed in the website policy. So the only thing I can do is respond to public information requests, which would include the media calling me and asking a question. I have no authority to preemptively offer information to the media or the public or anyone else. What this is trying to do is to give me that authority to determine if there's something that I think might be of interest to the community related to SAM, and to send that out as the public information officer.
Okay, well, I am still of the opinion that if we have a spill, the public should know about it,
Put the signs on the beach before.
besides signs on the beach, which not everybody looks at, not everybody sees, and can be removed.
Can you define the size of a spill?
Well, it's certainly a class 1 or a class 2
Well, category 1 is the only one in which we would-
category.
Yeah, category 1 is the only one in which we would close because it reached
Well, I think
surface water.
category ones ought to be
Then category
communicated to the
ones need to
public.
be communicated when they happen.
And that was the original
And I think it ought
language.
to be in a press release. I don't think I wanna rely on signs on the beach that somebody can remove, kick over, people don't always look at. And I'm not, as, you know, you
how's the
said I was
families in
worried
San
about the
Mateo?
tourists. I'm not worried about the tourists. I'm worried about anybody on the beach.
Please.
Either Half Moon Bay people, Granada people, Moss Beach people, Pacifica people,
Ratepayers.
San Mateo, anybody
Yeah,
has a
how-
right to know that there's a spill on the beach.
Scott's turn.
Okay, so I just wanna be really careful here, because I heard something said, and I may have misheard it in passing, but you as general manager have the primary responsibility to report this to the regulatory authorities.
Yes,
And that is your primary responsibility during a spill.
that is correct.
Okay. Those regulators include the Regional Water Quality Control Board and the County of San Mateo.
Correct.
Which department in San Mateo?
Well, we end up reporting it to the state and it gets sent out, but it goes to environmental health as well as public health, because the public health lab for San Mateo County is where we take our samples.
Right, and so we sample the waters
Yes,
according to their direction.
that is correct. And the signage is theirs as well.
So I'm getting there.
Okay.
The way that we post is directed by San Mateo County Environmental Health.
Mhm.
They tell us what we have to do, how big it has to be, how sturdy it has to be, all that stuff.
And also requirements for sampling, how many times, until what.
Okay, so I just wanted to make
yeah.
sure that we were super clear that
Yes.
we are living up to our required regulatory obligation to report and post and sample and test.
That is correct. We are
That is
meeting
our
that
first order of
requirement.
business.
That is
Well,
correct.
stopping the spill.
Yeah, stopping
Cleaning
the
up the
spill,
spill,
and we
all the-
always stop the spill.
Yeah.
And we meet the obligations required in our SSMP, the management plan, on how, who, where, when, and it's determined by the category. And we do adhere to all of
Yeah, I
that.
just wanna be real careful that we don't gloss over that and leave anyone with the
Oh,
wrong
no,
impression.
no.
All right, now Leonard.
Clarification on a little bit of what Scott said. It's my understanding, and maybe staff can correct me if I'm wrong, that when we post it, we're actually being an agent for the county, so they don't have to send somebody over here to do it.
Should I respond to that?
Please do.
So, just so you guys know, every time we have a spill, I actually call Greg Smith directly. Every single time we have a spill that goes in. Greg Smith, he's the environmental health officer for San Mateo County. He actually wears two hats. He's environmental health officer and he's environmental something else. But he's the main guy. So every time we have anything that enters a waterway, he's like the very first call I make to him to find out, what direction he wants me to go. And I'm in constant contact with him. Every spill we've had from Arroyo to Magellan to Alto, every spill we've had, anything, Kelly, all of them. I am in direct contact with him. I find out what he wants, where he wants it, how he wants it, everything orchestrated between us, so
Yeah.
nothing gets
So
by.
that doesn't seem to be
Wait,
conflicting
wait.
with what I said.
Can you let him finish?
That was it.
That's it.
That's it.
In addition to that is the requirement to report it to the state. Tim takes it to another level by calling the county directly, but just so you know, even if we weren't doing that, by calling because when there's a spill like that, you have to call it in. It gets alerted to all sorts of agencies, so that would happen anyway. It's just been the practice here at SAM to take it to a more personal level to make sure everyone that's supposed to be notified is notified and gets the information, and so that SAM is doing absolutely everything the county wants.
Yes, and I think that's great, and I would assume that. You're professionals. You do a professional job, you fulfill the requirements. What I'm asking for is something beyond what's required by the law.
That isn't required by the law.
So that's where we would need direction, and that's where the original, because Director Reddick had brought this up, and then I had heard from other directors as well as to, we need to consider doing this going forward. Obviously, there's nothing I can do going backwards, because as I said, I didn't have the authority to proactively do that. And I had prepared this policy, but it included that language. There was concern from various directors about that and asked to take it back to the outreach committee. That language itself seemed to be the difficult part, was we will, shall, must, do this with regards to a spill. So removing that, my hope was that at least we could have a media policy that would talk about being able to do a press release if something were to happen that was, noteworthy. But unfortunately, it didn't appear to staff that the board was authorizing a preemptive notification of spills. At least that was the direction I believed I got at the last meeting. It sort of died on the vine, for lack of a tiebreaker.
Leonard?
I just wanna make it really clear that I'm not suggesting that we hide the fact that there's been a spill. I just think that a press release is the wrong vehicle for that. There's all kinds of other more modern ways to do it. The SMC alert, we can find out if we can, well, probably not if, but just find out how to feed that, operated by county OES, Office of Emergency Services.
I think real specifically to that point, if a beach needs to be closed, if we're posting a beach that needs to be closed, I'd be supportive of getting something like that into that notification system, because that directly serves the purpose of keeping people out of contact with it, in addition to the
Those people
signs.
that subscribe, currently
Agreed.
10% of the population subscribes to SMC Alert.
That's a lot.
That's probably
It's
more
not
than
enough.
read the review.
Well, it's a lot, and not everybody's coming.
One at a time,
The entire
please.
population of the Bay Area is not coming to any given beach on any given day. What we need to get enough word to people who are gonna be in that area and could be affected by it. Those are the people who need to know. That is the point behind the county's requirements, which are, I believe, subject to the regional board's requirements, which is subject to the state water board's requirements, which is all in compliance with NEPA, a federal set of regulations. I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road of how we do this, but it comes from, all the way from the federal requirements. I think that's a mechanism that could clearly serve a purpose.
I think between that and next door and, there's probably some way to, I'm not that into the new social media, but there's probably a way to have some, SMS alert thing that you can subscribe to. I don't know how that would work, but.
I'd like to ask staff to find out whether there's a way to subscribe to the SSO notification system. When we file our report, give notification to the regional board. I know that we get something along the lines of a link that could be shared out. It might not be a bad idea for us to keep something on our website about how to go read about those.
There actually already is something on there
Okay.
about the CWIC site, and it takes you directly to the map.
Is the language that's on the state website, the stuff that you put in, I'm assuming that you're largely filling out a form, is that gonna be intelligible to the average
No, it
member
leads
of
you
the
directly
public?
to the map, where it shows where spills have occurred, so that people could look and expand the map to go directly to Half Moon Bay or wherever they wanted to look and see if there had been a spill. And they could see the date of this, the location, the date, the volume.
Is that on the links section?
Yes, it's on the links section, and it's listed,
The SWRCB Interactive Sewer Spill Map.
yes, that one.
Okay.
Yeah, and I added that after the last meeting when we talked about
Good.
better ways to get the public to be engaged, because as soon as we report and confirm that that spill has occurred, it shows up. So, once it's been certified. The only time there's a delay would be if we were responding, because we do submit on behalf of the member agencies for their spills. So, the member agencies would have to certify. So if they didn't certify right away, there could be some lag time, but certainly for us submitting it, it would be submitted within the required time. And then when they certify it, it would show up on that site.
Good, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, Deborah.
So, I like the idea of the SMC alert, but I also like the idea of using Nextdoor. You know, a lot of different organizations post.
Yeah,
you know,
unfortunately, we looked into that quite some time ago, and the problem is because we do not fit their definition of a jurisdiction. They wouldn't allow SAM itself.
But the county posts
The
their.
city
It's
does.
your own jurisdiction. We cross jurisdictions, and
So we could set about the process of finding all of the people responsible for each of the different regions
Yeah.
and individually make requests that they give us authorization to post as an agency. We can do that. That's just a matter of finding the people and talking to them.
yeah.
But, you know, why not, if you're picking up the phone to make a personal call when something like this happens, why not just pick up the phone, it's a small town, call Clay at the Review, just say,
Well,
FYI.
what he's doing is talking to the regulator to make sure that we are,
I'm talking about the approach.
I talked to the lifeguard too, because he sees a lot of people.
Yeah.
lifeguard.
I
It's good to
have
know.
I have to say that I have had enough experience with the press. And I'm using that broadly, I've been quoted in nationwide papers. I like to have things in writing when I communicate to the press.
Yeah.
It saves confusion.
Well, then shoot them an email.
I would like to know, what is the industry standard on reporting spills?
When I went looking for examples to create the draft last time, there were very few. There have been a couple more since then. One was a big spill on the Hilo side of Hawaii, and one was in Palm Desert. It's a very large
Were
spill.
there press releases? for
They
that?
were actual press releases, they weren't just reports, they were actual press releases. I was able to, in California, I was able to find 3.
And the
Releases,
Three actual press releases, so
not
for,
agencies doing this, but 3 total releases.
that I found that were proactive press releases, not response to the media calling them. Those were the actual ones that I could find that actually said press release.
Well, again, you know, the positive thing about doing something like that is that, you know, you kind of, you know, control the flow of information. You can also talk about what you're doing to rectify the situation, the fact that you've reported it, so that, you're communicating an important message, not just a negative but a positive. That's one of the things I like about press releases. And as we know, many news outlets just print press releases, you know, unanalyzed and, or rewritten.
Well, you know, to be honest, you know, the old story, if it bleeds, it leads, you know, usually good news goes by the wayside, because when I sent out the press release on the SRT contract for the design work, one agency printed it.
Did that
And I
press
sent
release
it
go
to
to,
5.
did that press release go to the review?
Yes, it did, they were the only ones that printed it.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to make one small reply, comment about the editorial in last week's paper. The notion that until the agenda containing the draft for discussion in our last meeting, that the review was unaware of the spills, suggests to me that they didn't read that press release, so maybe it got sent to the wrong address. Maybe it fell into a spam bucket or something.
No, they printed it.
They printed which?
Okay,
Listen.
so, but I would also note that the spills were on the agendas and in the minutes of the preceding meetings from the very first one. So to the reading public who read that and came away with the impression that Sam had not put out information that was available to the newspaper to know about and report about these issues, that would be the wrong impression. And I'd take the opportunity to mention to anybody watching the meeting that our agendas and our minutes are on our website, and that website is samcleanswater.org, samcleanswater.org. Our minutes and our agendas are there. The minutes come later, you know, after the meeting and after the board has had a chance to review and approve them. But the agendas have a whole lot of this information. The staff reports are very, very informative. And we've been meeting here regularly this year, discussing incidents when they occur and at subsequent meetings. So I think people could have come away with the wrong impression from what they might have read last week, and hopefully now there's a little better information.
Well, I will say this, so, the press was interacting with Beverly on the issue. I sent an email asking Beverly, did they ask about volumes? And
They
she
never
said,
did.
no,
Ask about what?
volumes in the spill.
They
So they
asked
were
me to-
aware of the spills, they weren't aware of the volumes, they didn't ask about the volumes. They,
If I can interject, and then Leonard can speak, we are at 9:55, and we need to adjourn at 10.
And we have.
may I have one last comment about this?
It's Leonard's turn.
At least a couple times just now, the thing that was in the packet was referred to as a draft, and we took a lot of flack in the review from at least comments that we didn't approve the press release. It was my understanding that that was not a draft press release on something that happened a month or two before that. It was submitted as a sample of what the press release would look like.
Yeah.
And so I just want to clarify that for the public record, that the SAM board did not refuse to issue the press release because that was not a proposed press release. It was a sample of what it might look like.
That is correct. That was staff's intent, that in the discussion, staff anticipated that there might be a question as, well, what would such a press release look like? What do other agencies do? And I literally took that from an existing press release from Southern California for a spill this year, and I just substituted it for the factual information from our spill to give it as a representation of what one might look like.
Once again, proving no good deed goes unpunished.
Unpunished, yes, yeah.
All right, Deborah.
This notion under policy that the press is to be treated like a customer, you know, the press isn't a customer, it's supposed to be one of the pillars of our, you know, US democracy, the fifth estate, so reducing them to a customer,
Have you noticed our current president?
I really don't like that language. So,
I crafted this from a variety of policies, so I was trying to capture sort of the
Yeah,
broad
and
range.
frankly, they, in a manner of speaking, they've been acting like a customer in the sense that they haven't been actively following what's going on at SAM for the most part, or attending meetings or doing coverage, so, but we wanna change that, so.
We would hope
What
they would be more
section was
interested.
that?
Oh, that's the second bullet point on your policy.
What Roman numeral?
Two,
Number two, page
second
80
dot.
89 of the PDF.
It says the press is to be treated like a customer.
I would suggest change the words like a customer to with respect.
Yeah.
My words exactly.
Shall be
Which
treated
I
and treated
hope
with respect.
Isn't any different than a customer.
Yeah.
And I hope it's,
I think the intent was right. but,
Exactly.
respect is a great word for this.
and it's no different than the past. They have been treated with respect and informed. I think the category 1 spill is appropriate. I think any little tiny accidental hiccup might be a little extreme.
I'm fine with that. I just think that if we have a category 1 spill, sending out a press release to the Half Moon Bay Review at least, is something that cannot hurt us, it can only help us.
Yep.
And more important, it helps the public.
I agree.
And I think it's fine to put it on Nextdoor, it's fine to get on SMC Alert or SOS or any of the other vehicles that we can use for communicating what's going on. But I think if we are not proactive about it, we're gonna look like we're hiding something.
Well, I
And we
think,
aren't hiding anything. We have great information when we have a spill from our professionals who tell us exactly what happened, exactly what they're doing to fix the problem. They give us a timeline almost. And actually, you do give us a timeline. You say, a few hours, a day, whatever. And I think that's information that ought to go out to the public.
but I think it goes out to the public after all of the regulatory agencies and after we have had time to craft
That
it.
goes right away.
There's a timeline. Tim can't make all the same phone calls at the same moment. So there's a certain timeline he has to have, and I think the.
You do that within a couple of hours, right?
Well, he's also out
We
there
make the
supervising the
initial
work.
calls, right away, we make the initial calls.
Yeah.
A lot of times, we can't necessarily assess the
How you're
entire
gonna fix
volume,
it or-
so
Right.
we'll have an initial
Right,
estimation.
I
And
think
then
we-
once we stop and repair the leak, then we come back.
right, and repairing the leak and getting accurate information before we go to the press is
Right.
critical importance.
Absolutely,
Whether-
absolutely not, but I think that there's no reason we can't get that information for what we give to the press from Tim.
Okay, it is
All
10
right.
o'clock and 44 seconds.
the-
Leonard, you've
the-
got 15
The
seconds.
proposed policy as presented here with that last sentence redlined out still gives the public information officer enough discretion to decide for any spill whether or not to issue a press release, so I move to approve
So,
it as.
hang on, I've got a comment about 4. I am
Roman
not,
4?
I'm not supportive of requiring that SAM employees identify themselves as a SAM employee when they speak as a member of the public. It is their right
I agree.
to seek redress of grievances and speak. I think it is important that they understand that they are not to speak on behalf of SAM, and should the question come up, I would hope that we have language that would make it very clear, please clarify that. But I don't wanna see us in a situation where we're putting on them an affirmative obligation to disavow their speakership for SAM, because that's not germane necessarily to their participation in whatever public process. I think it's unnecessary. I think it's just most necessary that
I'm
we,
not seeing.
section 4, if an
Right here.
employee chooses to identify himself or herself as a SAM employee in a
If
letter,
they choose, if they don't, if they
a
don't.
similar disclaimer must be given if an employee addresses a public meeting, participates in a radio talk show, or is interviewed for radio or television unless the employee has been designated.
But if they don't identify themselves as SAM
It's
employee, then
bad.
they don't need a disclaimer.
It's bad language, because the second sentence doesn't have that bit about about identifying themselves.
Carl, could you amend that to reflect this and we can make it,
Yeah, I think you say a similar disclaimer must be given if an employee chooses to identify himself or herself as a SAM employee when addressing a public meeting,
Right,
participating.
I just wanna be
Yeah.
very protective of their rights,
Sure.
their First
Make
Amendment
that
rights,
change.
it's really important.
And so very specifically, if they identify themselves as a SAM employee, then they have to do the disclaimer. If they don't identify themselves as a SAM employee, then they don't have to do the
Right.
disclaimer.
Correct.
okay.
And then I would add an urging, because the point here is we don't want someone to be construed as speaking for Sam.
Right,
There's just no good in that if that wasn't the intent.
right.
I think as a policy matter, if an employee sees that people are misunderstanding, that'd be a fine time to clear it up. I don't know how you put that into the policy, but I think it'd be good if we express it.
I suggest we bring this back then so we can see the specific language rather than approving it with the changes as suggestion. And do we have a motion to continue for an hour, or would you like me to adjourn?
We have,
Motion to continue for 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
we have
We
the
have
next
all of new
item, which
business,
has a presentation about the finance plan for recycled water.
which is, how long is that going to take? 5 minutes,
I move that we extend the meeting by
15,
17 minutes.
17 minutes. Okay, that would make it 10:20,
10:21.
and now it's 10:21. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who
Opposed?
seconded?
I did.
Oh,
Okay,
Karen's,
thank
okay.
you.
I'm
didn't
sorry,
hear.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
All right.
I didn't hear it all.
And in the middle of everything at 10:21, I will be calling adjournment. So keep your comments brief if you have any.
So do you need the projector?
Yes.
I'm turning it on
now.
Let's turn it,
Catherine.
yeah, let me get out of here. Or you'll
I'm
light it. Worse than that.
Yeah, just try one of them. Try both, there we go, we'll do that. Does that give you enough to work with?
Yeah.
That gives you, okay. All right,
Focus.
a little off color. What's up?
You wanna give a brief, Billy?
Huh?
You wanna start the brief?
No, go ahead. Jump right in, jump right in.
Okay, I'll jump right in. A financial plan was completed for the recycled water project. And the purpose of this financial plan was to provide a projection of the recycled water cost to SAM, the projection of annual costs for the project, as well as options for financing of the project.
Who prepared the plan?
The financial plan was prepared by Woodard Curran, formerly RMC, as subconsultants to SRT Consultants.
Thank you.
As was presented in the basis of design report, the estimated capital costs for the recycled water facilities are approximately $5.2 million. That includes 25% contingencies, that is applicable to this level of planning for the project, as well as 30% for soft costs such as administrative, legal, planning, and construction management costs.
Is that a total of 55% contingency?
Yes, a 55% contingency for the,
For the combined?
yes, combined. The recycled water conveyance system costs are a separate line item that was prepared and provided by CCWD. An estimated operation and maintenance cost for the recycled water project was also prepared based upon conversations with other similar treatment plants, as well as equipment manufacturers and other maintenance staff. So the annual probable operations and maintenance costs for the project would be approximately $273,000 per year. And again, the recycled water conveyance costs line items was prepared by the CCWD. Potential financing options for this project can come from a number of different
places. The U.S. Bureau of Reclamation provides grants for recycled water studies. The DWR also provides grants for recycled water projects. However, those grant programs are competitive, and in addition, planning studies are required to be eligible for those programs. So it would have additional costs and time to be even just competitive for those grant programs. Also available are Clean Water, State Water Revolving Funds programs, also known as SRF programs. The SRF program provides grants and low interest loans for recycled water projects. Currently, the SRF program interest is at 1.7%. And because of the Prop 1 incentives of an even lower interest rate, it was previously, they were offering 1% interest loans, and the program was very, very popular and had a lot of applicants. And so currently, the program is low on funding for the program right now. They are anticipating that additional funding could come, but that's subject to some further workshops that are coming within the next year. Also available is traditional bond financing with interest rates that could be up to conservatively 5% over a 30-year period. So based upon the capital costs as well as the O&M costs, a range of what the annual unit cost could be based upon a low interest rate, based upon an SRF loan of 1.7% at 30 years, as well as a higher, more conservative rate for bond financing at 5%, also at 30 years, could be anywhere between an annual cost of $495,000 or $496,000 per year up to $611,000 per year. Unit costs could be based upon average annual demands anywhere between $1,400 per acre foot or to $1,700 per acre foot, depending on the interest rate. And as we had stated before, the SRF interest rates can fluctuate over based upon what the interest rates are nationwide. Right now they're about 1.7%, and that may change. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
One of the early slides, you showed the total cost for O&M annualized. Does the M include all the maintenance over the years that's going to be required?
It does include anticipated replacement costs. For example, UV lamps that would be required to be replaced every 5 years. It includes membranes that would need to be replaced every 10 to 12 years. So those costs are prorated within those. So it does try to anticipate those maintenance costs.
So you try to anticipate everything that might reasonably be expected
Correct.
to be done.
Correct.
The energy cost was about $74,000 a year.
Yes.
Do you have a split between, say, pumping and UV?
Yes, that was, we did have a line items specific for pumping costs versus UV.
You
I
happen to
don't
remember
have that on me, but I can provide that. And
maybe kind of a ballpark split?
I'm sorry, I don't have
Okay,
it all.
all right.
Yeah.
I mean, my thought is that UV's probably half or better. But that's why I wanted to find out, I wanted
Yeah.
to inform that, okay.
And Hetch Hetchy cost is at $1,785 per acre foot right now. And so if it were marked up by the local water company to cover its costs, we're looking at a real cost savings for OCP, or Ocean
Can we go
Colony.
back to this slide? I don't remember the number on
The, which
that one. For
slide?
the cost per acre foot?
The high with the bond is 1,773, and the Hetch Hetchy is 1,785. But then you have to add the markup costs for the local water agency.
This is looking a little tricky here.
Well, the key for us is the total annualized cost, because the customer has made it very clear that for quite some time, that 515 was the target of what they were able to do. Bruce in the latest meeting said they could go a wee bit higher. So I would point out that the CWSRF would fit within that, according to this estimate, and that the 5% bond would not. So that's important for us to be thinking about, because it's kind of a go, no-go.
Yep.
There's one option, I don't know how this would affect the costs. I can't remember where I came up with this. It may have been while I was watching the last Recycled Water Committee meeting video. There was talk about building some thing over it to give some protection from the elements.
That's correct.
I would suggest that that be built with solar panels on it. And if you get the right kind of solar array, then you don't need anything under it. There are structures now where there is no roof under the solar panels. The solar
Leonard,
panels are the roof.
We are
So,
approaching, we have 7 minutes until
so potentially that could
blast off.
save a substantial amount of the electric
In
cost.
exchange for capital.
Debbie.
And because we're a government agency and can't get the federal investment tax credit, you do it on a lease. Get one of the solar companies to build it, lease it.
It's Debbie's turn, thanks.
This is really a question for staff, so what does staff intend to do with this document, this information now that we have it? What's the-
I believe at this step, it needs to go back to the member agencies, right?
Recycled water committee.
Oh, recycled water committee, and then
Yep.
to make sure that they don't have any questions, and then at that point, we need to go to each member agency, because this was the step that was sort of, as Director Boyd said, it was a go, no-go on the project itself.
Yeah, frankly, I don't see us fronting the money for construction, you know, I just don't see it, especially if we have large capital outlay because of the IPS and potentially fines and things. I just don't see it, we don't have the reserve to take care of that, so I'm guessing that OCP is gonna have to front money for construction. I
We'll
just
talk
don't see
about it, I mean, to the extent that loans or other financing might be available to provide that front capital. We've got to look at it all, right? And
I just
think,
wanna be clear that it doesn't look like something that we can front a large amount of
let me
money for.
just, I'll add on to your clarity that we have already fronted all the money that we've spent
Yeah.
so far to get here. And
And
I
that's
think this is
legit.
something where our partners, CCWD would be our, you know, the one that we're hope to be in contract with. We can look at them and see what they have to say, and then they can look at their client and see what their client has to say, and it's open calling partners, so, yeah, we gotta have that conversation. That's a good point.
Well, it's critical, given where we are right now.
But I'll note that this never gets cheaper, and every year that we
Yeah.
go is 1 year closer to.
I understand, but it's
Oh,
a question
I'm
of
not-
dollars and cents.
I'm speaking to the audience, Every year that we go is a year closer to the RITs falling in and the capitalization schedule being compressed by that year, driving up the annual cost.
Yeah, and what could potentially delay us is having to create new plans in order to qualify for certain grant programs, like
Right.
Bureau of Reclamation. You know, that's gonna cost money to get money, it's gonna take time,
So basically, we just need the board to accept the draft finance plan so that we can move to the next step.
I move that the board accept the plan.
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor?
I,
I'd like to thank staff and SRT for this good work. This is an amazing milestone. We're really short on time, so thank you.
Meeting's adjourned.
I would like to see the alternate evaluation with the solar covered.
Meeting is adjourned, folks, we're done.
Leonard, it wouldn't be that hard to.
How do you turn that off, Scott?
Okay.
Thank you.